I said there ought to be serious changes within the management of BBC News. Clearly, Mr. Davie and Deborah Turness were watching Sky News and decided to quit. So it just goes to show what power you have. I'm not in the least surprised, Jonathan, not at all. This couldn't go on. I said something odd was happening at the BBC. We're not quite sure what it was. It might have been a little bit of wokery. It might have been a few people asleep when they shouldn't be asleep. But the BBC News division could not go on as it was going. Far too much has come out in the Michael Prescott report. And I think that, Tim Day, the cover-up is always worse than the crime. Let me just take you back a little bit to the scandal involving Martin Bashir and the Princess Diana interview. The BBC has spent over £1 million of licence payers' money in trying to prevent internal documents being released to Andy Webb, the author of a new book about the Bashir scandal. And I think the BBC has paid out probably near £1 million to people who were smeared by it, including me. They paid me a little bit of money too, because I was called a jealous colleague, which was totally untrue. So I think in the last 2 or 3 years, things have happened at BBC News which never happened in my 40 years. I had 40 years at BBC News, got half my bloody life there. And all these things have come together at the same time. And they all point to ineffective and loose management of the most important news organization in the world. And if you compare, for instance, on Gaza coverage, I believe our Gaza coverage has been extremely poor. If you compare that to somewhere like CNN, the Atlanta cable network, they are light years and have been light years ahead of us. So there's a lot of cleaning to be done. It has started this evening. I think a fish stinks from the head, and it's right that the Director General has gone. I think it's right that Deborah Turness has gone, because her response and the response of Jonathan Munro to the Trump editing scandal was simply not acceptable. The BBC did not recognize until this evening what kind of trouble its news division was in and how that would drag down the rest of the BBC, because there's a lot of the BBC that isn't news and current affairs that also matters a great deal. But at the end of the day, when Reith created the BBC, it was about news and the ability for you to turn on a BBC radio or television set and know that whatever was being transmitted by news or current affairs was the truth. And we've got to get back to that. And that process, thank God, has started this evening.
I think probably just worth saying that CNN and others, of course, have their own impartiality issues that they've had to deal with when it comes to various other topics. But moving on from that, in terms of what the BBC does next, I mean, how can you ever put in place systems that can avoid these sort of things happening when you have a staff of many thousands, you have many executive layers, and also you're making, as Kamal Ahmed, a former BBC employee, told us a bit earlier, every hour they're making 9 hours of live broadcasting.
Well, that's what the BBC is about. That's what these people are paid for. It's their job to get it right. In my 40 years, we, generally speaking, apart from some very big bumps on Northern Ireland, we didn't have these scandals. We didn't have these editing scandals. We didn't have coverage of a war, which was in many instances partial. We didn't have a BBC Arabic service that had been infiltrated by people with their own particular agenda. That's why the BBC has always tried to hire the best and the most committed to independent news production. And that seems to have gone wrong in the last 2 or 3 years. Roger Mosey is very kind to the BBC system and says, well, mistakes are made here and there. But actually, the BBC should be mistake-free. You can't misedit the President of the United States and hope to get away with it. There is a real danger even now, or hopefully it won't happen, that President Trump could ban the BBC from White House press briefings, which would be a catastrophe. So I think that change has begun. I think it's good news. I think it was overdue. I think the cover up by the BBC of the various scandals it's had, including Bashir Diana, the Trump edit, the Gaza war, and various other bits and pieces of odd wokery, I think all that has now going to come to an end. I welcome the change. I'm sure they're going to find people who can handle the BBC as it's been handled beautifully for so many years.